Next up, I'm going to introduce someone that I work very closely with at the Gray Zone Project. He's the senior editor of the Gray Zone Project, Max Blumenthal.
Thank you, and something else. Are you ready to march? All right, I was just going to thank the organizers for making me go after Rebel Diaz. It's like a pretty hard act to follow. I'm not going to spit any rhymes, I'm just a journalist. Well, I'll do my best, you know. I am not objective, and neither are the journalists up in the Reuters Thompson building, at the Time Warner building, at the 30 Rock MSDNC building. They're not objective either. They just, you know, they have their little blue check marks on Twitter and their suits, but really you could just basically automate them with a automatic Wall Street and War Machine generation reporter bot. We want to do something different at the Gray Zone Project. At the Gray Zone, what we're trying to do is counter one of the most sophisticated and vicious information wars being waged against the minds of the Western public to cultivate support for destructive regime change wars that destroy any independent state. And what we have done is go to the ground in these countries that have been targeted for regime change and show another side, and show the people who are demonized and who are lumped in a racist way with the official enemy dictator. So we've been this year to Nicaragua, we've been to Venezuela, we just returned from Syria, and I'm tired as hell, as you can tell. And we were also in Honduras, a country where a US regime change operation succeeded. Let me talk about these countries a little bit. And she says don't go too long. We're gonna march. But let me talk about these countries a little bit and tie it in to the climate issue. You know, we're quality, not quantity here. This is like the anti-war movement. This is the woke people who've been red-pilled. You had like 250,000 people yesterday, no mention of militarism or regime change and the role that it has played in destroying the environment. So we have to educate them. There were 3 countries that did not sign on to the Paris Protocol. China, you know, somebody might call them petro-populists or something. They are trying to build an economy basically from scratch and lift millions of people out of poverty into the middle class. So they didn't sign on to it. Then there's Nicaragua and Syria. Why didn't they sign on? Nicaragua and Syria, you look up, you know, any report on this and you'll see, you know, you'll see NPR. You know, the evil dictator countries did not sign on to the Paris Protocol. Nicaragua didn't sign on because Nicaragua faces the direct brunt of climate change with hurricanes every year, and they considered it a band-aid solution that was too weak. And the elected Sandinista government, led by Daniel Ortega, is putting in place some of the most advanced mechanisms for preparing their country and their population with food sovereignty, with shelter for the effects of climate change, and so they didn't sign on. Then there's Syria. Syria didn't sign on. Why? Because our government spent billions of dollars to arm and train 31 flavors of Takfiri, Wahhabi Contras to devastate that country, and we saw what they did and talked to people who lived under their rule, and they were promoted to us as moderate rebels, as freedom fighters. Syria could not implement the Paris Protocols because the state was under direct attack. So this is the issue. If you don't have independent states, states get taken over. Nicaragua, a year later, faced a regime change attempt, and some of our lefty friends supported it. I don't understand why. They supported the overthrow of the Sandinista government with an opposition funded by big agro like Cargill. The Sandinistas and Nicaraguan people resisted, and they're continuing on their path to independence and environmental sustainability that goes well beyond what the EU and the US are willing to do. And can we not forget about Brazil, where we saw another regime change operation, where Lula da Silva is now in prison for a phony corruption scandal, and Dilma Rousseff was ousted in a parliamentary coup, and as a result, under the watch of Jair Bolsonaro, a far-right proto-fascist, the Amazon burned like it had never burned before. And I don't know what Extinction Rebellion was doing protesting the Bolivian embassy. They should have stuck to the Brazilian embassy. You know, get your heads right. We went to Honduras too, and I'm gonna wrap up here. Because Honduras, it's so important that we know what's happening in that country, where a coup took out its democratically elected leader, Manuel Zelaya, in 2009, presided over by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and installed a right-wing junta, now led by someone who is accused in a New York federal court of narco-trafficking, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who still, despite bringing bags of cocaine marked with his brother Tony's initials into the U.S., gets to come and visit Washington and meet with the Department of Homeland Security. Honduras has seen some of the worst attacks on environmental defenders, and many of you know the name Berta Cáceres. We were able to go to the home that Berta Cáceres was raised. We've just posted an interview that Anya conducted with Berta's mother. They are living under 24-hour police guard paid for by human rights groups. They travel around in armored cars. There are cameras around their house. They are under threat. Berta is from the Lenca indigenous group and defended her river and her land and went around the world denouncing not just climate change and making these empty calls to save the planet, denouncing the effect of capitalism and regime change and the policies advanced by Hillary Clinton on her country. And she was cut down, killed in 2016 by a death squad hired by a multinational corporation building a hydroelectric dam in her community, a hydroelectric dam that would have never been possible without this regime change operation. So it's our responsibility as people who care about this planet and the people in the planet, and who care about man-made disasters like the famine in Yemen, caused by our government and Saudi Arabia, our woke ally Mohammed bin Salman. It's our obligation to stand against regime change wars, phony color revolutions, and the corporate media's information war that they're waging on our minds. We have to be the teachers. We have to tell people how this is connected to the destruction of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. It is our responsibility as citizens in the United States, the preeminent empire, to show solidarity with the people that are being targeted by our government by regime change wars, economic warfare, and to say that we believe in international law and the UN Charter. That's exactly what we're going to do in a few minutes when we march together to the UN. I hope everybody's ready for that. But first, I just want to introduce our final speakers, David Paul and Adrian Pine of the Embassy Protection Collective. Come on up.
Hello. I consider myself a concerned citizen. I flew out here from California to visit the embassy, and mostly because I've been disgusted for most of my life watching the United States say they're trying to promote democracy around the world, and they're doing just the opposite. Regime change using violence, propaganda, militarism to overthrow governments and stop any efforts of self-determination in other countries. And in our experience in the embassy, they call us criminals. The real criminals are in the State Department, the White House, a lot of these buildings around us, who are trying to basically, their goal is to use whatever measures they can to steal the resources of other countries, to feed the greed of the corrupt elite, the capitalist elite that basically run this country. And I'm also concerned about the war on our rights and democracy in this country. And those same people use various methods of racism to divide us. They use legal bribery to buy the politicians. They voter suppression to keep people's voices silent, and use the media. I mean, this is not all news to you, but use the media to silence voices, and instead of real news, we see practically 24 hours of celebrity gossip and a deep analysis of tweets of a psychopath. So my time in the embassy was very inspiring to me. The unity and the collective consciousness that I saw among our group is something I feel it exists with other groups, but I feel we really have to think of building ties and realizing how much all of our issues are connected. And it's so important to build coalition and maintain in coalition with other groups if we're going to turn this around and reach people that are beyond just our circle of friends. I'm not saying we're doing that today, but I know it can be tiring to walk around empty buildings yelling slogans at each other. We want to do more than that. And if we work together and use our numbers, the strength of our numbers, we'll be able to do that. And Adrian? Oh, what's it then? So, and we should not be intimidated. We need to keep up the fight and do it together. That's how we're going to be successful.
Thank you, David. My name is Adrian Pine. I am a university professor. I talk for a living, and I know it is time to shut up. There's nothing I could say here that hasn't been said better already. So I just want to first ask any of the embassy protectors who want to join us here up on stage to come up right quickly. It's okay. Ben, whoever is out there wants to join us on stage. Juliana, get up. Martha, is there a step up? There's a step on the other side if you want to go up there. Julia. All right. Okay, I was charged with herding everybody up here, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. I'm going to hand it off to Anya.
No, I've spoken enough today. Let's see. Somebody... I feel like, let's hear from a protector who we haven't heard from yet today. No, or Margaret.
So I know what to say, apparently. What I want to say is that we so appreciate every single one of you who came out today. We so appreciate all of the Embassy Protection Collective members, all of the embassy protectors, because there were so many. There were protectors on the inside of the embassy. There were protectors on the outside of the embassy. There were protectors who were watching what was happening and sharing the news and letting people know. And all of us were key to the success of the embassy defense. And it continues because the Trump, I'm going to call it the Trump regime, right? They're not giving up. They're building terrorist camps along the Venezuelan border in Colombia. They're practicing trying to get paramilitaries into Venezuela to destroy the infrastructure, to massacre innocent people. And so our work continues. The economic war against Venezuela continues, and we have to demand no more regime change, no more military aggression, no more unilateral coercive measures. They're not sanctions, it's economic war. And so we say no to that. We say yes to obeying international law, respecting the sovereignty of nations, and resolving our conflicts in a way that intelligent beings can do, not through violence, but through dialogue and negotiation. And so we're going to wrap it up. We want to thank all of the embassy protectors for being here today, and everyone, we're going to march. Are you all ready to march? We're going to march to the United Nations to let the United Nations know, surprise, the United States is not above the law. The United States has to obey the law too, and as people who live in the current largest empire in the world, the most rogue state, the most violator of law, it is our responsibility to tell the United Nations that they have to do their job. I was going to cuss, but I don't think I should do that.
I don't know. We never heard a cuss word.
They need to do their job and hold the United States accountable to the United Nations Charter, which says everything we're doing is illegal. So let's take the energy, let's take the knowledge that we have today, and let's take it to the streets and march down to the United Nations. So